Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Carmel Nifus, and I am the certification coordinator for CanDo. I would like to welcome everyone for joining the Saskatchewan NRCan Mineral Exploration Opportunities webinar. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with CanDo, we are an Indigenous-run organization that focuses on capacity building for economic development for First Nations and EDOs in Canada. We are membership-driven, community-based, and directed by a national, regionally represented volunteer board of elected EDOs representing every region of Canada. So please keep in mind that this session will be recorded and available on the CanDo website and emailed to participants afterwards. We ask that you mute yourselves during the presentation and encourage you to use the chat box for questions and comments, and we'll break later on to address those questions and comments. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Pam Schwan is president of the Saskatchewan Mining Association, the industry association representing companies engaged in safe and responsible exploration, development, and production of minerals within Saskatchewan. Okay, Pam, you can start your presentation if you want to share screen.
Okay. Are you seeing the screen right now? Let's make sure.
Yes, it's on.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. And I'd like to thank CanDo and NRCan and Dave for the invitation to be here for some just preliminary remarks to cover some things about the Saskatchewan Mining Association. So thanks very much, Carmel, for the introduction. We've already sort of gone over. Our membership is comprised of exploration and mining companies that are active in the province. And this presentation will be available later, so I'm not going to get into too many of the details, but I did want to provide a snapshot about what the Saskatchewan mineral industry was about, and that it's actually, a very big part of the Saskatchewan economy, the Canadian economy, and it's important globally for the minerals that we produce. So Saskatchewan is the #1 location in Canada for mineral investment attraction. We are the #1 producer of potash. We provide about just over 30% of the world's potash. The number you see there is from 29, but that hasn't changed. 2019 hasn't changed significantly. NRCan just hasn't got the numbers for 2020 out yet. Same thing with uranium production. We're 13% of the world's production behind Kazakhstan. Our value of mineral production based on basically the commodity prices in 2019 was $6.7 billion of minerals that was produced in Saskatchewan, and $2.1 billion of capital expenditure was invested by the exploration, more so the mining companies in Saskatchewan, to advance deposits and build the infrastructure, all sorts of things like that. The Saskatchewan mining industry is also the #1 industrial employer of Indigenous people, and as we go through the presentations, you'll see they're also a very important client of Indigenous businesses, and many of you probably already are involved in economic development and procurement with them. In terms of mineral exploration, which is a starting point for anything, and Dave goes into that, we're #4 in Canada, behind Quebec, which is very significant, over $900 million this year. Ontario, BC, and then Saskatchewan comes in at almost $159 million in expenditures in 2020. Usually it's about 100 million in northern Saskatchewan, and the rest would be in southern Saskatchewan. Rio Tinto had a very big diamond program this year, which was a bulk of the southern exploration activity. You'll see this slide later, but it's a really important one for you to be able to put into context. There's about 23 different mine facilities in Saskatchewan. And we have all sorts of deposits. As mentioned, we're already global leaders in potash and uranium. Uranium is produced from the Athabasca Basin, which is this yellow oval here up in the north part of Saskatchewan, traditional territory of many Dene First Nations, as well as Woodland Cree. And the producing deposits are right now are actually Cigar Lake, which is located here, and the mill is located up here. So the ore is transferred that way. We also have another world's largest deposit, MacArthur River, which is here, and it is milled. The ore is milled here, again at another existing facility to be processed. Our potash deposits that are delineated by this pink zone, with the largest mines on the eastern flank here in Treaty 4 with Esterhazy and Rocanville, and then some along the northern flank of the area, which is in Treaty 6 territory typically. And then we have solution mines in around the Regina, Moose Jaw area, and that's all really controlled by the geological parameters. All the mineral deposits are controlled by the geology. You don't find potash up north here, and you don't, the geology is the controlling factor of why you get deposits where you get them. This is the big area for diamonds right here to the east of Prince Albert in the Fort Elicorn area. And in the north, we have one gold mine located about here. It's a fly-in operation with historical production of copper and nickel on the east side, and also some copper deposits up on the north shore of L'Orange. The last slide here talks about potential for different critical minerals and battery minerals. A lot of that will be in northern Saskatchewan here within the Canadian Shield, which is demarked by this area to the north. Whoops. Oh, now I'm in trouble. There we go. Whoops. Sorry to make you dizzy. But also there's some new models for lithium, which is going to be a really important mineral in terms of battery electrification and electric vehicles. And that's actually going to be produced really from oil and gas producing areas, and from as a byproduct of some of the material that comes up from that. So that's more in what we call the sedimentary basin of southern Saskatchewan. In terms of mining in Saskatchewan, there's a lot of people that work directly for the mines. Over 12,000 work directly for the mining companies with an average payroll of $123,000. So they're very good paying jobs. They're very safe jobs, and that's direct employment. In terms of Indigenous employment and engagement, procurement, 21% of all mine employees are Indigenous, and those are that's a self-declaration as well. So that's over 2,600 of the 12,000 employees are Indigenous throughout Saskatchewan. And in 2017, it will be over $650 million worth of goods and services were purchased from Indigenous-owned businesses. Many of them are the big ECDevCos that you may work for right now, whether that's something like Kitsaki or Desnette or Athabasca Basin or Foul Hills Capel or Sikitawak. They're all very well established. The northern mining sector by far has the longest history of working with and developing procurement opportunities for Indigenous businesses, whether it's entrepreneurs or ECDevCos. It also has a very high level of support from northern communities, over 85%. This has been, decades of working with communities and finding what works and what doesn't work. Here we've got NRT taking some of the special ore containers from Cigar Lake to the mill. You also have a lot of, this is the emergency response team at McLean Lake. Those employees go back to their communities and are emergency responders in their home communities. This is a fellow that works up at McLean Lake Mine. And here we've got an example of one of the community supports from the companies during COVID. That was the Cameco's $1 million COVID release fund. So this has been, over 30 years, I guess, almost 40 years in working with ECDevCos to get where they are right now, and they are definitely leading in Saskatchewan. In northern Saskatchewan, for example, 56% here of all the employees and contractors at the northern mine sites are residents of northern Saskatchewan. And there was procurement of over $328 million last year from Saskatchewan Goods and Services Company. Most of that actually was from Northern ECDEV codes. This is just a graph over the years of Northern employees' wages from 1991 to 2018. With the closure, temporary closure of some of the Northern mines, we've seen a drop, you know, in the total number. But I think when you get back into better times, you see those employment numbers creeping up. And I've got a commodity shot price at the end that sort of will show you why that graph is like it is. Again, in terms of the mining sector, over $8 billion has been paid out to Northern employers and Northern goods and services suppliers since 1991. This is another bar graph that kind of shows what that history looks like. Big year in 2012 with you know, over $624 million in that year that was procured from Northern ECDEV codes. And this is just a list of supplies of the goods and of the services that were purchased from Northern businesses. And you can see that there's definitely some strengths in terms of goods that are purchased from Northern businesses. And then there's areas where there's very little purchased. So those are maybe some gaps. Same with the services. You know, most of the flights and air charters are purchased from Northern businesses like Westwind, zone by multiple DevCos, including Athabasca Basin Development. But then you do get some ones that are lower. So those might be opportunities to look at in the future. The southern mining sector in Saskatchewan is playing a little bit of catch up, but they're doing a great job in what they're doing to build capacity and increase engagement. A lot of that is being leveraged off the existing Northern ECDEV and working in partnership with the Southern ECDEV. We have a number of SMA events and outreach that we do that I want to make sure you're aware of. We're restarting our Mineral Exploration Expo this year, which is about exploration projects in Northern Saskatchewan predominantly, and procurement and employment opportunities. We're looking at a date in October for that. We have a workshop on Indigenous inclusion in the mining supply chain. That's part of our larger mining supply chain forum, and we are going to be in person this year. So these are all old dates, but the events still happen. We also do career outreach. We just did last year an Indigenous career card and poster series that's available, and it's gone out to various communities, and it's also online at our website. And we also advocated with SAS Builds this year to ensure there is an Indigenous procurement policy. So that's one thing, if you're not familiar with it, I'd certainly look to SAS Builds to get more information on that.
Hi, Pam. So thank you so much for sharing your presentation. Did you want to wrap up anything really quick?
Sure. The last slides I won't maybe go over, but it just talks about the drivers. I'll just leave maybe on the last one with you know, the products that we mine in Saskatchewan are not for our consumption, they're for global consumption. And then when we look at global sustainability, climate change, needing clean energy, a lot more people to feed, the fundamentals for Saskatchewan potash and uranium production are very strong. So mining will be here for a long time, and it's a good opportunity. So I'm just going to leave it at that and can answer any questions later. Thanks, Carmel.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pam, for your introduction there. Did you want to share your website on the chat, in the chat box, just so people could look to see when the in-person events are going to be?
Sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, that's great that they're going to be in person this year. So we'll just be moving on to our main speaker. I'd like to welcome Dave Lefebure. He has more than 30 years of experience with government geoscience surveys and mineral exploration companies. An economic geologist, he is knowledgeable about a wide variety of mineral, industrial mineral, and coal deposits. So Dave.
Thanks, Carmel. And oops, I got to adjust my screen here or move a little further away. Hold on a sec, because I'm going to stand up for this presentation. Just works better for me. Just so you can see the recording screen. It's going to be mostly looking at the slides. So yes, looking forward to chatting about opportunity for Indigenous communities in Saskatchewan. There's, as Pam has outlined, there's lots of opportunities. And one of the exciting things about Saskatchewan is the variety of minerals and therefore the variety of geology, therefore the minerals and metals that you can mine. And if you were to look at potash ore, which is being taken out of the ground, hopefully you can sort of see that. That's the Saskatchewan, some of that's the Saskatchewan mineral, which contains the potash. And they're mining this either from underground mines or in solution mines. And as Pam said, #1 producer of potash in the world. This is the province of Saskatchewan, not the country of Canada. And so that's remarkable. #2 producer of uranium in the world as a province. And so that's also amazing. I don't have a sample from the uranium mine. And gold, there's also one gold mine, but lots of potential for gold. It's sort of just a little trinket I got from a mine conference. But here, gold is actually it's very valuable because it's very rare and has lots of special properties. And I'm not sure how well this is going to show up here. Let's see, that's a little too close. You can see this a little flecks of gold. If I, as a geologist or as a prospector, see that, I get incredibly excited because gold is so rare and you rarely see it in rocks. So that it's lucky that Saskatchewan has that. And Pam also mentioned the other thing that's exciting about Saskatchewan is not all the different types of deposits have been found. And in Saskatchewan, there's a chance to do what's been done in 3 other parts of Canada, in Ontario, Quebec, but primarily in Northwest Territories. In the last 30 years, we've found diamonds. And there is a potential to Saskatchewan. This is just from another conference, and it's a very big sort of mock diamond. But Saskatchewan has the potential to also have a producing diamond mine in the next decade. And so there's a lot of exploration going on, and they've found a lot of the right kind of rocks. And so I'm going to try and give you a more extended presentation. Pam's introduction was excellent in giving you a high-level interview and talking about some of the details. I'm going to present the information hopefully in a way that doesn't bring, even though I'm a geologist, doesn't bring in too much geology, and it sort of focuses on the information you need to know. So I'm just going to put my headphones on to make sure that you're able to hear me clearly through this presentation. And away we go. So one of the important things about minerals is that they're ever present in our life. The gravel on our driveway, under our highways, and the foundations of our houses, all the way up to critical minerals that are very important for modern technology, like laptops with tantalum and cell phones with cesium or pollucite. They're critical to modern life. They're also critical to green technologies, which I won't be necessarily talking about, but they are very important as we move forward into being more responsible with the environment. We actually need mining and mineral products more than ever. So my outline of the presentation, I want to give you opportunities for Indigenous mining jobs, businesses, and agreements in Saskatchewan. And this will sort of give you a broad overview. We'll then have a question and answer session. And then I'm going to go through the life cycle of mining, because you don't just develop a mine, you have to actually have somebody go out and find the mineral occurrence and then do a lot of work usually to determine whether it's something that actually is economic, that you can actually recover the product and make money on it and sustain it as an economic operation. And then I'm going to give you a few key points at the end that relate directly to you as an economic development officer and mining. We'll work our way through. We're going to have 2 question and answer sessions during the session. One will be about half an hour in and one at the end. And you're encouraged, if you have a question while we're going through it, use the chat box and put your question in there, and we will address those during the question and answer sessions. This is all about mine development opportunities, all the opportunities and economic development opportunities that you as economic development officer can bring to your community or to an Indigenous business related to your community. So 21% of the Saskatchewan mine employees are Indigenous. I'm going to be repeating some of Pam's numbers, but I think it's a good idea to just give you a chance to reflect on them. In the mining sector, for every directly employed person working in a mine or at a mine site, there are usually at least 2 jobs in the supply and service sector. And often for Aboriginal businesses, it's the mining jobs at the mine are important, but it's these other 2 jobs that are as or more important. It's the 3rd largest industry in the province of Saskatchewan. So you, as an economic development officer, you want to pay attention to this. Many of these jobs are quite attractive, and they provide the employee with a chance to build their work skills and take those work skills and be employed elsewhere. Perhaps the most important thing is the jobs are in virtually all regions of the province, as I'll try and show you in a general sense, and as Pam was emphasizing. And this includes mines in the northern parts of Saskatchewan, where there may not be a lot of other competing sources for business or employment. It's a wide variety of jobs. So you've got underground miner, you've got people working in a sand and gravel pit on the right there at the top. You've got catering associated with some of the remote camps. Here you can see an exploration crew using the helicopters just taking off. That's actually for a diamond exploration project. Early stage, looking to try and find a new place where they might find diamonds away from the area that Pam mentioned in her slide. Just a very wide variety of mine jobs. I'm not going to go through it, but look, they're in the mine, they're in the mill and the shop, they're in the offices, they're at the camp if it's a remote site, and it's road access, again, primarily for the remote sites. And if we total them up, depending how you do it, you get over 160 different mine jobs. So lots of potential for employment. The Saskatchewan Mining Association, I give them a lot of credit. They've done these career profiles that Pam did mention. I'm just going to show you a few. It's well worth looking at these online to just sort of see the variety of jobs that are associated with mining. So these are just some of the ones that I picked out. This whole slide presentation, as with Pam's, is posted or will be posted. This one is already posted at the CanDo website. So if you want to go back and look at detail, you can do that after the session is over or at your convenience. Goods and service contracts. There's that $649 million figure from 2017, courtesy of the Saskatchewan Mining Association. Mines require quite a wide variety of goods. You can see them listed there. And those are good for all sorts of companies and all sizes of companies. You see, I've mentioned pickets. Pickets are just sort of little stakes you put in the ground as location markers for where you might be putting a road or where you're going to be doing some drilling before you do some blasts. There are some mines that are large enough that they have a single supplier of pickets, believe it or not. Well, that's a very good entry job for a small company. Mines often contract out specific services rather than having their employees do it. It's a more efficient way for them in certain locations or for certain types of jobs. So security, environmental monitoring, snow removal, food services, accounting, things like that are all things that are up for bids from companies that are not the mining company to deliver those services. Companies also of various sizes tend to bid on these things. Many mines prefer to contract local companies and recognize the value of using Indigenous companies. And so in some cases, those mines will actually help an Indigenous company get started. So they are logical places to look for economic development. CanNorth, I'm going to give you a couple examples, and I'll be providing examples all the way through the presentation of Indigenous owned companies and Indigenous entrepreneurs and who are involved with mining. So CanNorth, Canada North Environmental Services, 100% owned by the Kisaki Management Limited Partnership, a business arm of the Lac La Ronge Indian Band. They deliver independent and community monitoring programs that have been protecting the environment for nearly 2 decades. So in this case, this is not at the mine site. It's actually in and around the mine and associated with the mines. And so it's tied to 7 Athabasca-based communities. and it's provided services related to the communication between these two, the Indigenous and local communities and the mining developments. It was established in 1997, so it's got a long history of doing its job. Athabasca Basin Development. This is one of these development corporations that Pam was mentioning, owned by 7 communities in the Athabasca area. You see them listed there. And it was established to maximize local community participation in the opportunities in the mining. And on the right, you can see the first number of companies. There are actually 5 more that they've created. I'm going to mention Team Drilling later, and I think Points North. So I mentioned a couple of them, but a variety of companies that have developed out of this, usually based on the critical mass of having the mining company. But as the development corporation has proceeded forward, it's gotten into other areas and developed other companies that are delivering, say, other types of services that are not directly related to the mining industry. So the mining industry provided a starting point for a number of these companies in this development corporation, but they have then used that as a base to expand the types of economic activities they're delivering. True North Technical, bridging the gap between employers and professionals. So it's sort of a placement type of company. It's located in Northwest Saskatchewan, and so that's an unusual place normally for perhaps a company like this to be located. And you can see it finds the right individual for a variety of companies, but specializes in petroleum mining and the construction industry. There's you can be multi-sector contractors, but mining can be a significant part of it. Misto Chemical is one of these ones, and they are quite concerned about both their Indigenous nature, but also participating with Indigenous people and communities across Saskatchewan. I'm not going to get into Indigenous community active mining agreements. Here we're looking at a map that is from the federal government. You can see the website at the bottom. It's showing all the mining agreements that are registered, that the government has been able to put into this database by across Canada. And you can see in Saskatchewan that there are quite a few colored dots. There's a legend on the right as to what those dots, the type of agreements they mean. Some of them are with exploration programs. Some of them are with mines. Some of them are just with a sort of a letter of intent. So an initial agreement between a company, a mining company, or an exploration company, and an Indigenous community or First Nation. And I'm not going to focus on this because this, as an economic development officer, you might be involved in providing some advice to a community or a First Nation that's entering into these agreements, but they're not really, they're more, they're not sort of something that you would normally be directly involved with. It would come through other members of the community. I just put 2 in here just sort of give you a bit of a sense. You can go into this database because it's online and just get an idea as to who's done it. There's one with the Musqueam First Nation, with the Canto Potash Corporation. The name of the company has changed, but it's for a large potash type operation. And then there's another one, another potash operation, and you can see there's some different details for the status. This is a slide's a bit dated. I haven't gone to the database. I pulled this off earlier this year, and I haven't checked it for this presentation. It showed the Jansen project is on hold. We'll be talking about it later, but that it may have been changed to the database, may not, but the database is actually, the Jansen project is going ahead. Mining is all over Saskatchewan. And so there's the map that Pam was showing you. It's showing the geology of the province. Overlaid on that, there are where the potash mines are found. So they're indicated by dots and tied to the legend there. And the potash mines are in the south, the #1 commodity produced by Saskatchewan, and the biggest player for mining in the province. And then the operating uranium mines that are active now are shown in the circle to the north, but that whole yellow area, which Pam mentioned is the Athabasca Basin, has potential for uranium, and there's actually active exploration all around the edges of the yellow area and into it. This map comes with a 2020 listing of the mines and mineral exploration properties in the province, shown by all those black lines there. And this is something which comes from the Saskatchewan Geological Survey. It's put online. You can download it. It's available free. It comes with a report that summarizes all the exploration and mining activity from the previous year. So it's updated annually, and it would be is an excellent tool for you as an economic development officer. So mine products in Saskatchewan, we talked about potash, we talked about uranium. Pam mentioned the gold mine, but there has also been copper zinc produced from mines in the past. And so if we had mines that were producing copper zinc in the past, there is a potential with more exploration that we'll find new mines. New metal mines can be actually quite difficult to find. And so that just because there is no mine producing now, if you have a history of production, it means that someone has to invest more money in exploration for that particular deposit type. Industrial minerals. So this is, potash is a type of industrial mineral, so it could be included in that, but it's really dominant in Saskatchewan, but this is like salt. And I'll come back to this later in the presentation. Coal, there's coal produced in the southeast corner of the province, which we'll see in a minute, and sand and gravel. Don't forget about sand and gravel. It's the third most valuable mineral product produced in Saskatchewan. And anytime you're building a road, as I said before, or the foundation for a house, you need sand and gravel, and you need that throughout the province. So it's also, and the cost of developing sand and gravel pit or quarry is much less than some of these other projects. So there's the uranium in the north. I'm showing the geological potential for it, not where the mines are. So it's in the north. And so that potentially is of real importance to communities in the north. We have gold in this area in the south. The actual potential is probably a bit larger area than that, sitting west of the triangle as shown, but that's the area where the companies are focusing at present. Copper, zinc, and nickel, a larger area. No mines there for that, but potential. And then if we go to the south, what we see are the diamonds that Pam mentioned. They've actually found that slide I showed of helicopter is right at the northeast corner of that square. So we can probably assume that the area where you can find diamonds in Saskatchewan is actually a bit larger than that. We have peat, we have potash, which you talked about. We've got salt, so like table salt and other products, clay, helium, believe it or not, and coal. So we've got a lot of different products. Look at that. When you look at that area, you think of where you live, what community you're in, or what's in your region. It does mean that if you're an economic development officer in Saskatchewan, you should definitely be thinking about mining. Mining commodities in 2021 are listed there. And you see uranium, it's actually both an energy commodity, but also it's listed with metals in terms of geochemical signature. Gold, copper, zinc, coal. Just a little bit of copper and zinc produced in Saskatchewan based on a mine that's actually right on the border between Manitoba and Saskatchewan, but lots of potential for more production in the future. Then you see the long list of minerals and rocks that are mined, like limestone is used in construction and also as a source of cement. So it's a very important commodity for industrial activity. And there's the construction materials. I mentioned the importance of sand and gravel, crushed rock, riprap. There's sylvite. So that's the sort of pinkish mineral in that sample, and it is the mineral emblem for Saskatchewan. So mining is not well known. Why is that? And I'm assuming that our audience today is fairly similar to most audiences that I speak to. And I'm not thinking of Indigenous, I'm thinking of just all audiences across Canada. Mining is just not that well known, and there are reasons for this. It's not generally taught in schools. Many mines are in remote and rural areas, and so the bulk of people don't see them. Access to these industrial sites is restricted for safety reasons. So you don't just walk past a mine, you have to get permission to go on the site. You have to be taken by people who are going to protect you. You're going to usually have to wear protective gear. It's the safest heavy industry in Canada, mining, believe it or not. In Saskatchewan, one of the statistics that really amazes me is, guess what? You're safer working in a mine in Saskatchewan than you're working in a government office. Can you believe that? When I first saw that, because I'm an ex-government worker, for a long time I worked with the British Columbia Geological Survey. Anyway, that's just, it's gone from being an industry that has a history of unsafe practices to, in countries like Canada, where it's modern mining with modern safety codes and well administered by government agencies, to becoming the safest heavy industry in Canada. Mine products are often processed to get to the final product. So sand and gravel, we can sort of recognize that might have come from an old stream that's a stream bed or from some deposit put down by glaciers. But by the time you see gold in a ring, you're not thinking of that neat little rock I showed you where I saw a speck of gold. And so it's we're remote from the actual source of the metal or the product that's usually being used. And I would say the mining sector, and this is partially their fault, has really focused on getting the job done and not been very proactive in trying to talk about what they do. Having said that, we have a number of mining associations for provinces and for the country across Canada that are doing an excellent job of providing more information. But it's a lot of people and relatively few people talking about it. So do you know the following highlights of the mining sector in Saskatchewan? So just a really high level ones. And this is exactly what Pam was saying, world's largest potash producer. That's amazing. World's second largest uranium producer. She talked about 23 sites with sort of major operations on them. In terms of actual mines, it's the number I came up with early this year was 15 active ones, and numerous quarries and pits throughout the province. And this really annual figure that's of $7.4 billion. And you can sort of see potash is huge for that figure. Uranium is next. And then a lot of the other activity, the 0.4 billion there is for all the other sectors. So it does show the importance of that huge sector for potash and uranium. But that $0.4 billion could be right in your backyard and you would like to go after it. So that takes us to our first question and answer session. Sorry, Carmel.
Oh, that was right on time, right when I was going to jump in.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so we don't have any questions or comments in the chat box, but I did want to open it up to the floor to see if anybody wanted to ask Dave or Pam any questions.
While we're waiting for that to come, are you asking them to do it by chat box, Carmel?
Yes, please, if you or if you want to turn your camera on and speak directly.
Either way will work. While we're waiting for maybe that first question or two to come in, you as an economic development officer should be in this presentation, I think, thinking about two things. One of which is just geography. Where is my community? If I live in Moose Jaw, oh, there are a couple of potash mines very close to where I live based on this presentation. Oh, I sort of knew that, but I hadn't really thought about how I might approach them or whether there's a potential for economic development. So you need to think about where you live in the province and think about it. And remember, sand and gravel, anywhere there's a road, people are looking, or anywhere there are houses, people are looking for sand and gravel for foundations for the house or for the road. And sometimes very large quantities of it. So, but most of these other commodities have specific regions where there are working mines. The other one is, which I'll be talking about, is exploration. Got anything yet, Carmel, or are we just?
No, we have no questions at this moment.
Okay, well, the other thing I think you should be thinking about is how you might best, as you get some of this information, I guess both do a bit more to educate yourself in future. And we have references for sources of information that there's a list at the end of the slide deck, but also we have a longer list that wouldn't fit on one slide that's on the CanDo website. So there's good places to go. There is now quite a bit more information about the mining sector online, thank goodness, and you can go find more information. So This is meant to get you interested, give you enough information to start seeing some of the possibilities. But obviously, as with other sectors, if you're going to be a good economic development officer, you're going to have to invest effort in understanding that particular sector and how your community or your economic development corporation or businesses could be developed related to your community. Back to you, Carmel.
Okay, so Dave, we don't have any questions at this moment or comments, so we can just carry on with the presentation.
Okay, I'm ready to go here. When I do workshops about mineral exploration and mining, we usually call it something like the life cycle of mining. We have a longer period of time, and I like mining, as with any other type of economic activity or human activity, has potential impacts on the environment, has potential consequences. We mentioned the safety part that the mining sector has addressed. But I just want to let you know, I'm not talking about that today, but I'm not trying to ignore it. It's just at this point, I'm trying to give you a targeted message related to economic development. But if you're going to be looking at economic development related to mines, you have to recognize that mining, like any other sector, can come with concerns. And so I just put one here that a couple of things I pulled from the news media. One's talking about a mine accident. There are still accidents at mining operations, and we have occasionally they result in deaths. And so the safety is still a concern. There are other concerns about potential impact of a mine operation on the local environment and other ones. And I'm not going into this in workshops. I will talk about mine reclamation at the end. So what happens with a mine at the end of its life. But that's not part of what I'm talking about here. So it's not to say that the mining industry doesn't come with aspects that one needs to consider with respect to your community or your business, but it's not part and parcel of what we can do with the time available to us today. You should obviously educate yourself if you get involved. Mining is a key source of government revenue for the Saskatchewan government, and you can see that. And also the mines provide to local communities significant social and community contributions. These aren't related to services being delivered, they're just donations to local communities to allow them to deliver other services. And there's the direct, indirect, and induced mining jobs, could be about 30,000 jobs, about 6% of total employment for Saskatchewan, with a large payroll. Government's role in exploration and mining, it's the provincial and territorial governments that have responsibility for almost all the minerals and mining products. They administer the mineral claims and regulate the exploration activities. That's at the front end. They have this geological surveys that generate maps and reports to support exploration and attract investment. They permit mine developments and mines. They enforce safety regulations and assist with mine training. So there is across Canada some of the best mine training work going on an ongoing basis so that there are teams that can go to mines and rescue miners if there's a challenge. They require reclamation plans and reclamation bonds, money that's placed with a third party. So if a company is unable to reclaim their mine site properly, the government can access that money to do it. The federal government has a much smaller role. They're very important to First Nations and Indigenous communities, and they administer mineral rights on reservations. They do participate in environmental assessments of larger mine proposals, and they're particularly involved with uranium. So that's important to Saskatchewan. Number of the aspects of uranium mining, because of the potential safety hazards to the local environment and people from a radioactive mineral, they're involved in various aspects. So the Saskatchewan government would have some roles that would dovetail with what the federal government for uranium. But generally speaking, their role is very restricted for everything else. Access to land for mineral exploration. You need a mineral tenure or some other type of a document that gives you the right to mine or exploit that metal, that mineral from the ground. It's important to note that no mineral tenures are allowed in Indian reserves, in parks and some special protected areas, temporary areas under study by government. So governments say we have some concerns about this as to whether we want mining or other types of economic activity in this area. There could be crown reserves that relate to potash and oil and gas, which will not allow you to acquire mineral tenure of any type in that area. And some private lands are excluded from claim acquisition. As of 2020, about 13% of Saskatchewan land was held for mineral, potash, coal quarry, and alkali disposition, sort of tenure or ownership. So it's actually a significant part of the province. Now, much of that land would be land that's not associated directly with an operating mine or a past mine. It's areas where people think there's future potential to find a new mine. Mineral tenure holder rights requirements. There are different tenure systems for different mineral products. And so it gets quite complex. I'm not interested in going into that, and would only be if you got involved in a sort of mineral exploration or some particular type of sector with the economic related to mining or the mining sector, that you'd really need to know this. You need to know, as I mentioned before, that most tenures do not result in mines. They're very hard to find. And so there's a lot of activity that's related to looking and exploring for new mines, but in many cases, it does not result in a mine. So you have, as I said, more tenure being held, and relatively few of it relating to those tenures relating to active mines. You stake claims for metal, uranium, gold, etc., and subsurface minerals like potash and salt. And this gives you the exclusive rights to explore and prospect. You can convert it to a mining lease, and you pay money to hang on to this, so that if you don't hang on to it, if you're applying for coal quarry and alkali mining, they have a different tenure system, and we're not going to worry about that. You can go online and see where these mineral disposition mineral dispositions are. So this is a very recent phenomena. It's started in about 2005, actually in British Columbia, showing this information online in an active format, so that you can interrogate the information, and the information is updated daily. And Saskatchewan has this. It's important to you as an economic development officer if you want to sort of get some sense of what might be in particular exploration activity that's going on in your region, particularly in northern Saskatchewan, that you could use this to find information for your own intelligence or for your community. This information also allows to track global investment. Many of the larger mines, not sand and gravel pits and some of the smaller mines, but many of the larger mines actually need international investment or national investment to come up with the hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars to develop a new mine. And so the fact that people can look from outside of Saskatchewan and say, oh, there's an opportunity here based on the geology and availability of land is really important. So I'm going to move to the life cycle of mining and show you some pictures. So we start with prospecting and early exploration. And this is more relevant to northern Saskatchewan and the metals and uranium, but it's in a general sense true for any mining commodity that you have to go out and find it. And then you go into mineral exploration. You go into, sorry, I'm just going to see. Hold on a sec here. Okay, sorry. Okay. Then my apologies. Sorry. Sorry, I've just turned something off here. Okay, there it's going. Let's see. Okay, then we get into mining. This is showing a head frame for an underground mine. My apologies for that. And then we go to mine closure and reclamation. This life cycle of mining can take quite a while because you can have prospecting and early exploration and mineral exploration. That can be sort of repeated multiple times because somebody didn't see that speck of gold in the rock like I showed you in the first 2 or 3 attempts of exploration. And so we'll talk a little bit later about how it takes a lot of exploration projects to get to that final mine. So that's what we call the mining life cycle. It's interesting that there are indigenous business opportunities all the way through this life cycle of mining. And I'm going to try and give you some examples so you can sort of understand that. And in fact, in some cases, mine closure and reclamation would be one of the ones where I think indigenous communities actually have a huge edge over many other companies in terms of getting contracts and starting businesses right there. So mineral exploration path, got the prospecting, you have geochemistry. So just think of this, collecting samples and you're looking for small amounts of gold or copper or some potentially some uranium if you're exploring for uranium. None of these would be significant or necessarily observable by to the naked eye, but you could find them and that can lead you to it. We could do something called geophysics, which uses instruments that send currents into the ground or register information that's coming from the ground using electronics to look for ore bodies. And then the most critical part and the most expensive part is drilling, because most mines that are mined today are not found at surface. Those mines have already been found, so we're looking for ones that are near surface but covered by glacial material and or other rocks. You're searching for a hidden resource. And so you look at these kits, and this is just to tell you it's difficult. They've got less than 6 inches of soil over something that they're digging. They were looking for treasure, a treasure chest, or maybe a dinosaur fossil, particularly applicable to some parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan, or maybe they found an archaeological relic. They're optimistic. They have to be, because that's what you need for exploration. But it just shows the difficulty of looking for something that's hidden below even 6 inches of earth. Prospectors, they've made many of the discoveries across Canada of metal and industrial minerals. They work alone often, or maybe with a partner, like I'm showing here. They spend their own money. They don't have anybody funding them. If they can find something, they can then sell their property to somebody. They sort of hike through the bush, walk on logging roads, follow creek beds, and use things like a rock hammer and a gold pan. And their idea is to find something they can sell to a property. We then have what we call small companies or junior companies in the industry lingo. These have several to tens of full-time employees. They have a single office. Most of the ones exploring in Saskatchewan would have an office that are small or junior companies be in Toronto or Vancouver, because that's where they can attract investment. These companies do not own a mine, so they have no source of revenue. They raise their funds for investors who hope to see significant dollars come to them for their share price increasing from a discovery. This is very similar to the video game industry, where you can think of an individual or maybe a couple of individuals working in their garage, and 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000 invents a video game and they become rich overnight. Well, or a new drug for pharmaceutical industry that is successful because they invest a lot of money in a number of types of drugs, but only perhaps 1 out of a number will actually become a commercial success. Their shares trade for cents to dollars, and many of them exist for less than 5 to 10 years. You can see one of the things with these junior companies is they tend to change names, And you can see Shore Gold, they're the one that has the diamond. Remember, we were talking about diamonds, and Pam was well mentioning Rio Tinto as well, a big player. Well, there's the diamond, the fake diamond I was showing you earlier. Well, Shore Gold has recently changed its name as they're trying to go to Star Diamond Corporation, as they're trying to go to production. And so there's a case. Shore Gold was undoubtedly exploring for gold originally. Didn't have any success with gold, but they actually found some diamonds and started focusing on that. Collecting these samples from streams, from soils, from silts, different places in the bush. So you can get jobs working doing this sampling if you like being in the bush. Rock sampling and stripping rock outcrops. You have to get to the rock and see what you can find in it. I've worked in lots of settings like this. These geophysical surveys I talked about, they can be in the air, and so you can see a fixed wing and a helicopter doing it, or they can be on the ground. And they're just trying to establish what is the composition in a very general sense of the earth in that area, and could it be potentially be mineral rich. Early exploration jobs, there's a list there. We mentioned, and so you can see there's a geologist there, thank goodness, a geophysical crew, drillers, kitchen helper, cook, camp setup. There's quite a variety of jobs there. But it's the drilling that usually nowadays leads to the key discovery. So these are some pictures of drills. A lot of drilling in northern Saskatchewan is done in the winter on ice or in areas where it's better access in the winter to that region. Geologists will describe the drill core to understand it. And all of this is influenced by commodity prices. If you're exploring for gold and gold prices are down, exploration is, and they stay down for a while, exploration will just drop right off for gold. If we look at uranium for northern Saskatchewan, you can see on the left there the blue arrow. Well, uranium prices took off and peaked in about 2008. Well, there was a huge boom, and I'll come back to that, I think, in the next slide. And then it's dropped off, and we've seen much less exploration for uranium after that, dropping off, and it's possibly increasing slightly now. For an exploration company, they have to be reasonably optimistic that the price for that commodity is going to be attractive enough for them to be able to develop a mine, or more likely, sell it to a larger company. I just have the price there as of June 2021. These are sort of prices that will vary for uranium anyway from day to day. And those companies that are exploring for uranium will be watching them closely. So here's the Saskatchewan mineral exploration expenditures for all types of deposits, not just uranium, but all types of deposits from the Geological Survey. And you can see that it peaked in 2008, just when the uranium prices were the highest. And if I assume, and in 2020 it was about $242 million just for mineral exploration. So there's a potential for economic development officers and related industry activity to mineral exploration just on its own. And there's the uranium prices, just showing how, in particular for Saskatchewan, where uranium exploration has really been a key element for exploration up until recently, the impact of the prices on how much exploration is occurring in the province. An estimate of $1.2 billion spent on mineral exploration in the 10 years between 2003 and 2013. There were 16 new discoveries. Most of those did not become deposits, which could potentially become mines. And there were hundreds of projects. And the map on the bottom right just shows all the ground, all the mineral tenure in different colors that were held by different companies. So a real sort of land rush of acquired mineral tenure. There's the Athabasca Basin, which Pam mentioned earlier. It was shown in yellow on the map. In this case, it's being shown in green. And it just gives you some sense of the current exploration programs. Exploration companies are thinking that uranium prices are going to be increasing. So there actually is a fair amount of uranium exploration going on in the province now, more so than a number of years ago. Gold exploration. So this is taken from a website of a company that was originally started in BC and is now has a spin-off company that's exploring this in Saskatchewan. It's between Flin Flon and L'Orange that they have a number of properties. So each of those orange triangles indicates a gold property they have, which is very early stage. And there is the L'Orange Gold Belt, and there's been quite a bit of gold production from there in the past. And then there's the CB gold mine. It's the only gold mine in that area. So this exploration company says, well, if there's one gold mine there and it's outside of the known gold belt, there's probably a good chance to find something. And so what they're doing is they're using helicopters because there are no roads in most of the areas they're exploring. They're taking samples of soil looking for gold. They're taking samples of rock looking for gold, and they're doing some drilling. And they're hoping to find the next gold mine in what might become the CB or some other name for gold belt in that area. Here's the Pico property. They're exploring for diamonds, and they're sort of to the northeast of the prospect to become the first diamond mine in Saskatchewan, which I'll talk about later. They found 10 kimberlites, which is the type of rock that hosts diamond deposits in Canada, and 5 of them contain diamonds. At this point, they haven't found enough. You can see the big pile of sample bags they collected on the right there at the bottom. All those are being analyzed to see how many diamonds are in them, what are their quality, what are their value. This property actually now is not that active because they haven't found enough evidence yet to think that there is really a high chance of there being a mine here. All that means is that they may not have the best property in that area, or it could mean there are no economic diamond mines in that area. They're hard to find. So team drilling, they're involved with drilling on exploration projects throughout Saskatchewan, and probably also have, forget now, work in Manitoba as well. They're training and using Indigenous drillers and staff, and it is an Indigenous corporation. Indigenous entrepreneurs, these are harder for me to find and give you examples, but Louis McCready, who was in that shot of the ground geophysics, knew this geologist, Tom Lewis, who's the gentleman on the right in the blue shirt on the right slide. And they talked with each other, and they decided, Louis McCready started a company to build core boxes to hold the drill core. And you can see the geologist logging the core. Well, he needs all these wooden boxes. So that was an entrepreneur working with an exploration company to develop a company to provide core boxes and work. Environmental studies are a part of exploration programs, particularly as they start to get larger. They do want to collect baseline data, and from that point, they start that on. They'll just be doing more and more environmental studies, not only to get baseline data to monitor, but also if the exploration program becomes larger, to monitor the impacts. Here's a medium-sized exploration camp, or a couple of them, one in the winter in northern Saskatchewan, just to give you a sense of size of a larger camp than the one I showed you earlier. And these are the ones, once you start get to drilling, you're going to tend to get to camps this size. You've got a house, you've been doing more work, you're housing not just the drillers and their equipment, but usually more staff related to the drilling program. List of advanced exploration jobs that add to those ones we've seen for early exploration. And again, just a variety of jobs, and certainly a good place to go and develop a skill or get experience. If I were to compare and have early and advanced exploration here, all of them require government permits. All of them require tenure. Other than very early stage prospecting, they're allowed to sort of walk on the land and prospectors, individual prospectors. But I'm now not talking about the prospecting stage in this one. So an early exploration program, maybe 5 to 50 people in a camp. Junior companies, sometimes with a larger company involved, they'd be spending maybe $50,000 to millions of dollars annually. And it's usually in the summer, but with winter drilling in Saskatchewan. And there's an opportunity to do exploration services and derive some initial community benefits if you can build a connection between or an agreement with a local community. And there's generally limited environmental impacts. And I'm sort of giving you this because if you're an economic development officer, you certainly need to know what scale of economic development is and what are the opportunities there. Go to an advanced project, more people, much more often have larger companies involved. You might be spending up to hundreds of millions of dollars over years. That's, for some of these really advanced ones. The field programs are going to go on for multiple years and might be year round, which again indicates more need for services. And there's significant opportunities to provide exploration services and sign benefit agreements. They will be bigger operations, and so they can have more significant environmental impacts. Sorry. So we've talked about mineral exploration, both early and advanced. Now we go to mine development, and that was just that picture is just showing open into a tunnel where you can actually drive a truck in and go underground and access the underground workings. And the tube is one that takes air, surface air into the mine to keep it ventilated. So we're going to go into mine development paths. So you continue environmental assessments. You're going to do bulk sampling. That's from the diamond, the most advanced diamond project in Saskatchewan. So you can see they've collected a lot. They've done lots of drilling with large drill holes, and they've been sampling large amounts of material to see where the diamonds are. And some of those holes would have no diamonds in them. Some of them would have some diamonds. And so therefore some of those piles would have some diamonds, and some of those holes have had enough diamonds that the company thinks that they might be able to develop a mine there. And then you have to get more government permits, and this is a very demanding period of time, and you have to do economic feasibility studies. So the company has to establish that they can actually complete the exploration and develop the mine and get a return on their investment that will satisfy their shareholders and anybody who loans some money. And then they have to raise the money using that feasibility study. That will take a period of years, and is quite a demanding phase. A lot of advanced exploration projects will be thinking they could go to become a mine, but will not be able to pass those hurdles. If you're going to evaluate the potential value of a property, developed property, become a mine, depends on the type of the mineral, the market price, its location. If you have to build roads, or if you're just going to use air access, that's going to change the economic threshold. It'll be higher. You have to get more value out of the deposit, and it's going to depend on the sort of value of that resource when you calculate that in. Distance from markets and supply points will play a role. The potash that's produced in Saskatchewan, most of that gets put in train cars and shipped overseas, either through Vancouver or Churchill. And so that's as long as people are prepared to pay the price, you can afford to do that. There's a regulatory regime. It has to be environmentally safe and responsible, and you need a qualified workforce. This is usually done by senior companies. They've been in existence for decades. They may have changed. Some of the ones that relate to Saskatchewan these days are shown below. There's hundreds to tens of thousands of full-time employees. There's multiple offices. They have producing mines, therefore they have revenue. They sometimes have treatment plants like smelters, refineries, or power plants. And their stocks trade for tens of dollars or more. So there's the Fort La Carne Diamond Project. And the spending on diamond exploration projects in 2020 is anticipated to be over $100 million. Much of this will be focused on the number of kimberlites, those rocks that host the diamonds in some parts of the world of this project. And that's Star Diamonds is the project. And that's just another shot from the air of where they've been processing the material coming out of the drill holes to capture the diamonds out of them and assess their value. Diamonds are being produced in Quebec, in Ontario, one mine in each of those provinces, in the Canadian Shield, in the northern parts of those provinces. The first diamond mines were found in Northwest Territories, and there's a number there. This is a bit dated slide, so it's not quite current. And there you can see what was Shore Gold. You can see the old name there for the two mineralized zones that they were working on. So, and these diamond mines, the ones that have been found so far, they're worth $400 million to $4 billion in terms of the value of diamonds in them. And they can operate for about 20 years to sometimes up as much as 100 years. So they are major economic vehicles. We need to wait to see what's going to happen in Saskatchewan. With mine development, you have to have site preparation. They often use contractors. In mine development, it's often this stage when the mine has the most employees and potentially has the most contractors, people who don't work for the company, but who are providing services. These are both shots of potash mines under development in southern Saskatchewan. Points Athabasca, I'm going to come back to them. I think I've moved their slides, so it's not right after it, but we're doing this contracting work for the KS Potash construction camp, now called Bethune Mine. And that's an Indigenous company doing the work. One of the ones that entrepreneurs I came across that I really liked is Four Souls Cleaning. It's providing cleaning services for the Bethune Mine, that one I just mentioned, which is near Moose Jaw. And they've been doing it since July 2014, every day of the year. And they're, in 2014, it was a mine development project. So these cleaning services have been contracted out to them. They want a safe work environment for their people. It was started by this gentleman, William Lavalley, which you can see seated at the table there. And he started by purchasing 2 vehicles. He transported the bulk of his workers to and from work, and he offered, a positive team and a good salary, and has built a business that has had a sustained connection to this mine. And this is a quote from him that you can read, that he's part of his very strong personal ethic that led to starting this company. They'll erect structures and they'll deliver trailers. Often there'll be a construction camp, so they'll need to be, they're housing people near their workplace, because they're often bringing people with expertise from other parts of the province or from outside of the province for a potash mine. This period of time would be sort of a minimum of 2 or 3 years, I would estimate, but could be longer. Here's the Jansen potash mine. It's owned by BHP, but they've been having challenges. They've been developing it since 2015, but as we'll see a bit later, the potash prices have been lower in recent years, and so they've sort of slowed it down. They were originally thinking that new potash supply was going to be needed by 2020, and this is one of the largest mining companies in the world. They weren't right on that particular prediction. They are right in the longer term, but not for 2020. They also had to deal with COVID-19, and throughout Saskatchewan, any of these mine development or mining operations in particular have had work stoppages or slowdowns related to it. They were estimating upon shaft completions, and they're building 2 shafts. You can see one behind the other in this picture, to go on underground mining. And they were going to spend $3 billion just for the shaft completions. There's other expenditures that would have been, and any of the other expenditures they were doing for that at that point in time, up to that point in time. But that was not necessarily going to have completed the mine. So a large mine can have very significant expenditures. Well, here's the changing commodity prices for potash, and you can see that it hit a peak in about 2009, and it's dropped off since then, and it's been for the last couple of years. It's been stagnant because the price is fairly close fairly close to what it was about 1.5 years ago. So this has led to a slowdown of developing new mines and a consolidation of ownership. The overall production of potash, and I don't know the figures, would have at least stayed at the same level, and they may have tightened up on their staff. Ultimately, this type of scenario can lead to a temporary closure of some mines until the price recovers. So we've done the mining. So this is to tell you to get to mine. For metal mines, I can't use this for uranium and potash because we don't have as much statistics there, and they're different. But for metal mines, for every 1,000 properties you stake, you get hundreds of mineral exploration projects. Thinking if you take that over a period of time, you might get several mine development projects, and you're lucky if you get 1 or 2 metal mines out of it. So there's just because you see an exploration program in your region does not mean you're going to mine. If you're a banker or an accountant, you would say, well, not much chance of that becoming a mine. There's a lot of work that has to be done, and only a relatively small of them become mines. So these are characteristics of working in a high-risk environment. Think of a tightrope walker. So when you're dealing with exploration companies who are really at the front end and the prospecting early exploration company, if the government were to change and become, say, we don't want anybody exploring for gold in Saskatchewan, those companies are saying, well, this is going to risk our chance of finding a mine and being rewarded. We would go, and I'm not suggesting the Saskatchewan government is going to do that. They want gold mines. The various things can change whether companies want to continue exploring. Sometimes these mine developments can get very far along. This is a uranium mine development called the Millennium. Cameco, which is one of the two big uranium companies mining in Saskatchewan, they had a feasibility study about 2008, and they were planning to start underground development in 2013. They started the environmental process, which involves, in this case, because it's a uranium mine and a bigger mine, it's the federal and provincial governments in 2009. In 2012, they paid $150 million to buy out Areva Resources, which was a joint partner in the project. In 2014, they halted the project due to uranium prices. Well, all these things were costing quite a bit of money, and that project is still stalled. And you can see what happens here is there's 2009, the environmental assessment process starts. There's May 2014, they decided to wait for higher uranium prices, and they haven't come yet. So even when you're a major company with experience in mining and a particular commodity in a certain region, commodity prices can stall a project. It's interesting, they signed an agreement in 2013 with the English River First Nation. There's a bit of description about them. And they were planning, as the mine went forward, particularly as it went into production, that there would be a significant financial benefit to the First Nation. Unfortunately, once they closed the project, very little of this agreement would have been in play. So that's just a way of showing it. For uranium mines now, we have two mines on care and maintenance. And that's largely COVID-19 has had all the uranium mines closed for a period of time, including Cigar Lake. But also the low uranium prices have not helped those mines as well. And you can just see they're all up in the northeast corner of the province. Clough Lake was a mine, it's closed now, but there is exploration to the south of that area, quite active exploration, and maybe we'll expect to see another mine there soon. Here's just some pictures of the mine, Cigar Lake mine. Peak construction, 500 workers, production requires about half that. So processing takes to the mill, a place at the mill about 69 kilometers away, and it's owned by 4 companies. Here's the processing plant, just get a sense of the scale of that. It's processed ore from 6 mines, 6 ore bodies, so not just Cigar Lake. Here's the Eagle Point mine, it's under care and maintenance, as I mentioned. So that means that there are people on site make sure that everything about the mine is being maintained properly, and it's living up to the permit requirements, but they're not actually producing any ore, so they're not actually, unless they had some stuff stockpiled, they're not actually generating any revenue, which is obviously a challenge for them. And here's the Rabbit Lake plant that goes with that mine. One of the companies that's working that's related to the uranium industry and others that is Indigenous owned is this NRT, Northern Resource Trucking. They do a lot of the ice road trucking for the mines and for presumably for communities as well. The mines use the winter roads to get in supplies to save costs from transporting them when it's in other ways that are more expensive. And they've developed technology to do that more efficiently than was done in the past. What is neat about them is with the downtown of the uranium industry, they had less work to do. So they've expanded their operations. There was a new gold mine forming in northwestern Ontario, and they expanded into Manitoba, Winnipeg, as a center for some of their trucks to do some work in there, but mostly based on supporting this grassy, Rainy River new gold mine for the and they had a partnership with the Big Grassy River First Nation from that immediate area. And so they started hauling, and this has become a major part of their work. I assume it continues, but certainly was for several years. And so just because you had a base with one mine doesn't mean or mines in one area doesn't mean that you're constrained to stick with them, obviously. I call this an economic development stepping stone. In this case, the northern village of Île-à-la-Crosse started the SDC, this Economic Development Corporation, for construction, and they were a 100% owned subsidiary of this construction company to provide service to a mine. So they had heavy equipment operators, construction, labor, road building, and airport maintenance for this mine. But over time, they transitioned into providing community services. And so I think they were not adverse to perhaps doing work for mines, but that work, for whatever reason, ceased to become as significant for them. And they were able to migrate using the initial work provided to a mine site into providing contracting Saskatchewan highways locally. So sometimes working at a mine site can be just a stepping stone to either a much broader economic development corporation or into providing services to other clients and possibly not to the mine any longer. Saskatchewan potash and salt producers, all the potash, some of the potash mines also produce salt. And they often operate for decades, have hundreds of workers. And remember that often 2 or more spin-off jobs for every person working on site. And there's a picture of some of the products that come out of potash mines. Here shows their location. So if you're sort of from southern Saskatchewan, you want to look at that and see the various communities. So there's Regina. You can see there's solution mines to the west of Regina. It just doesn't show Moose Jaw, but they're sort of north of the highway and between Moose Jaw and Regina. And then you can see some of the other mines. There are actually 3 companies that own these 11 mines. Just recently in the news, Esterhazy K1 and K2 mines have been closed. There is another shaft being built there called K3, which I'm not showing because it's not in production yet. But they are, the company Mosaic that owns that has virtually completed that shaft, and they're closing down K1 and K2, but they'll start mining in that area with this K3 shaft. Here's an aerial view of the potash plant, not the actual head frame but the plant and some of the waste material and ponds associated with it. Bethune Mine was a legacy potash project when it was underdeveloped. It was the first new solution mine in about 40 years. They used this to go deeper than the underground mines, and nobody works underground on these solution mines. Actually, I think that I should mention on the next one. Their capital cost was over $3 billion, and production started in 2017 with a mine life of 55 years. So it's you can sort of see a plant on the left with the agricultural activity in the front, and then you can see one of these solution ponds where they pump solution down into the ground, dissolved the potash minerals, and brought it back to surface, and they're precipitating it in that pond. So everybody works on surface in this case, and it's just drilling. There is salt production. Saskatchewan has very large salt resources. They are also solution mines, and there's 2 companies. So remember, salt gets used in roads and has a lot of other purposes, including table salt, but a lot of this is used for the chemical industry. Gold mines. This is a picture of one of the Santoy mine, the CB mill, which is the only active gold operation in Saskatchewan. And so it's in the Larange belt. The CB gold mine is to the northeast. So there were 7 gold mines that produced over 2 million ounces of gold in the Laurence Gold Belt. So there's presumably still potential to find more. The slide on the right is where they're pouring molten gold, usually with a bit of silver in it, into castings so they can make gold bars. Coal mines, production is going down. It's about 7 million tons annually. It provides, used to provide about 50% of the power in the province. Now it's down to 35% as the province is shifting to renewable energy resources and natural gas. And they're in the southeast corner of the province. Sand and gravel operation near Saskatoon. These are all over the province. If you want to learn more about sand and gravel operations and sort of trying to understand the opportunity more in the sector, go look at the Alberta webinar where I focus on that more to explain economic development opportunities that could be of interest to economic development officers from Indigenous communities. It's mentioned it was the third most valuable in the province, and it has different, it's administered differently by government, so you would need to find out about the ownership rights for it. And sand and gravel, it's all about location, location, location. The sand and gravel is 10 kilometers away from the people who are buying it. It's going to cost so much. If it's 100 kilometers away, normally they're not going to buy it because it's going to cost too much to transport it to the user. Sodium sulfate, so this is some of the industrial minerals, just showing some other plants on the thing. So there's points in Athabasca from the Bethune mine. 75% owned by Athabasca Basin Development. So we heard about them earlier. So this is just one of the companies they have. And they're an industry-leading contracting firm. They've got lots of work, and they want to deliver it with an Aboriginal workforce. What I thought was neat about this was we are also proud to be a transitional employer, and we are well known as an excellent resource for long-term Aboriginal employees. For example, in the last 3 years, our clients have hired over 100 employees from our projects for long-term positions. We view this as not just one, but over 100 success stories. And so it's, I thought that was very neat to see this on their website, and a very, very progressive way to approach that. So they're giving the skills to these employees, and then these employees in some cases are, for whatever reason, because Points at Athabasca is going to be contracting in a lot of different locations. These employees may be able to transfer from Points at Athabasca to working at a mine site, or working with a contractor that supplies a mine site where they can live at home or closer to home. Saskatchewan mining reclamation is handled by the Ministry of Environment, and they're worried about mining and mineral exploration. It requires a number of permits. And most importantly now, throughout Canada, and certainly in Saskatchewan, when you're planning a new mine, you're also planning how you're going to close the mine, how you're going to decommission it, sort of remove all the materials and infrastructure related to the mine, but also how are you going to make it an environmentally safe site. And so you can see that there's a number of permits that are required, and these are required to be in place before the mine starts operating, at least the parts that are specific to that particular mine and that type of operation. So just a few pictures of mine reclamation. And so we got Contact Lake Gold Mine. The before on the left, so you can see a large open area. You can see a small, this is a small gold mine, so a relatively small building and relatively small footprint. It was returned to the Crown following rehabilitation by Cameco, and it was the first decommissioned and reclaimed mine site in Saskatchewan in 2009. And now they've also, this is a bit older photo as well, but not as old as the one with just the buildings removed. They've planted trees to start the revegetation. Coal mine reclamation, that's been ongoing. It's very a good story about this type of strip mining. So this is a plane shot, and we're looking across the prairies here. On the left, you can sort of see a dark gray band sort of slanting across the picture, and you can see some black areas. That's where the coal is being mined. As you come further towards the right of the picture into the middle, there's a light colored band. That's where they've removed the surface soil and vegetation, and they're storing that because the mining is going to come to that area. And what you're seeing on the right, with you can see the roads, that's where there are still fields and roads preserved. And what they do after they finish the mining is they refill the trench where the coal was taken out. They place back the rock material and the soil material that they've mined, and then they establish either ponds and small lakes or sort of regular field vegetation in the coal, so that they're in recent coal mining in that area. There's been very progressive reclamation, which is a very good thing to see. There are abandoned mine sites in Saskatchewan, and we have these across Canada, and they are a concern. The Saskatchewan government, along with the Canadian government, has been working to address these. In this case, Gunnar and Laredo are old uranium mines mined in the 1950s and into the early 1960s, and they're being decommissioned and being worked on. To see another relatively few of the uranium mines are actually being closed. Clough Lake is one, and so here's what it looked like as an operating mine. Here's what it looked like in 2008 when they reclaimed the pit and the waste dump around it, and here's what it looked like when they've reseeded it and revegetated it. And here's a shot of their plant site. And here's what it looked like in 2006. So they removed all the buildings. Sorry, I don't have a picture of what it looks like now. It will have been revegetated as well, but I don't have a picture for that. So it's just showing that with modern mines, there is much more planning and much more attention being paid to how to reclaim the sites. So we're going to shift now, we're nearing the end of the talk. Hopefully Carmel thinks I'm on time here. And you need to, if you want to be involved in economic development for mining, you do need to learn more about the sector. It's got many different characteristics from other types of economic activity. It has many similar characteristics, but it also has some, I would say, unique or unusual characteristics. And so I'm going to talk to you about sort of three aspects that you might want to think about a bit more. FR equals financial risk, key factor for mining projects. So mining projects, because so few, particularly at the exploration stage, few become mines, and even mine development projects that look like they're on track to become mines can stall or sometimes stop. That's financial risk, and that'll influence how the company trying to develop the mine works and how investors relate to it. It's a safe, heavy industry. I've talked about that. Highly regulated in Canada. You need to know that because there's still a very strong misunderstanding of mining being like the old type of mining, which was quite unsafe. Remember I said that in Saskatchewan, government workers actually take more time off due to incidents at work than miners. It's time to find, it takes time to find, permit, and build a major mine. So these projects now, they need to be larger to be economic. That's one of the things I didn't talk about. And so I'm going to talk about those briefly. Financial risks. So you can see this graphic. So risk. You're always trying to balance the reward versus the risk. I should actually change that. Or trying to decide which of the risks for an investor to be here. This little figure is saying an investor wants to say, well, which is the riskiest project? I could go with project A or project B. The investors can choose to move their investments, lower commodity prices. Demand for a commodity can drop. We're seeing that with coal in particularly thermal coal around the world, that people are moving away from coal. Processing can be more costly than was originally anticipated. Permitting delays could result in a project taking 2 years to get to where you're actually getting money back on your investment. Government changes to business or regulatory environment can make a project no longer economic at that time. So that's in the background of all these bigger mining projects. Safe operations at mines. This is just some more statistics about it that relate to Saskatchewan. And just so you can look at that. But this is important to remember because you may be dealing with people say, well, we don't want mining because it's not a safe industry. And they would be thinking of what I would call old mining in Canada, not modern mining. One of the interesting things in Saskatchewan is there's been a real attempt by companies, several of the larger companies there, to move to what they call towards sustainable mining, or what I would call trying to become, in both a Saskatchewan context, but also a Canadian context, a world leader in mining best practices. And this is about being accountable. And so you have assessments that are conducted at the mining facility, not just by the company, but by independent people, and you inform local communities on how the mine is doing. It's being transparent, reporting what you're doing against a suite of indicators that have been chosen to be good ways to identify you're doing best practices. And it needs to be credible. It needs to be involved with an independent community of interest advisory panel. And so these are things that are really positive to see for the mining industry in Saskatchewan. And we don't need to focus on this, but there's just 8 other countries are following the lead of Canada to adopt these principles as a way of having mines that are adopting best practices. I just remind you that I mentioned before, the Saskatchewan Geological Survey publishes an annual review of exploration and mining. It's available for free, available online. It comes with that map as an independent but downloadable PDF. The other thing is the staff are a good source of advice and expertise. And I would encourage you, if you're thinking about a project and you want to know something technical about it, you would be well advised to contact them and get their advice. And as I say, there's a better sheet of mining information sources available online at CanDo. This is a shorter list that I just was able to fit on this slide, but there is both Saskatchewan and national information that would be very useful for you if you're trying to assess whether there's an economic development opportunity you should be addressing. And you can see my email at the bottom should you want to contact me. Thanks, Carmel.
All right, thank you, Dave. So I just wanted to open it up to see if there was any questions. We currently do not have any in the chat box right now. We did have one earlier from Cindy regarding available funding for First Nations for economic development opportunities and training opportunities. So we don't offer any funding for training or economic development, but you could visit our website, www.edo.ca, and we do have a funding resource page.
Yes, and I guess what I'm glad you had that. Both federal and provincial / territorial governments will have programs that at times that might fit what this person is asking. They tend not to be sort of permanently ongoing, so that it depends a bit on who the government is, a little bit on what their budget's like. So it certainly would asking people from a particular government about that would be well worth doing it. In some cases, if you have a need for training, I didn't put an example in this one, but for Manitoba, the couple of the large mines in the Flin Flon area, but in Manitoba, have sponsored training programs, and they've been training programs that have been at sort of sometimes at the beginning of the life cycle of mining related to exploration, and sometimes and as well as all the way to working as underground miners or working with technical staff on surface in their mills, and so it's. That's a little more, you're not necessarily going to be able to find out automatically on a website, but if you had a large mine in your area and the mine is doing reasonably well, they often will have a shortage of skilled workers if the mine has sort of been not, adding to their staff. And so I would think that it's certainly worth considering approaching a nearby mine that seems to be doing well economically and saying, we think we have some people with sort of the skills that could be trained to perhaps work at your site. Can we work together to do it? And certainly that's what was happening in Flin Flon. In that case, it was actually the two companies, Hudbay and Vail, both had done things, and they were sort of reaching out to the communities. But there's nothing, if you can get to the right person with a large mining company or with at a mine site, sometimes if you've got a good suggestion and they need skilled people, you may be able to generate funding that way too.
All right. So just a reminder that this session has been recorded and will be shared on our website afterwards and emailed to the participants. And a full list of the resources available will be included. So on behalf of CanDo, I'd like to thank our guest speaker, Pam Schwan, and our presenter, Dave Lefebure, and our sponsor, Natural Resource Canada. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Carmel.
Thank you.